Yeah, Juan says it's big pharma. Maybe it is. It's big pharma's influence for sure, I think. That's my opinion. Can the world get any crazier? I think it can, and I'm glad it's not, but it's going. It seems like it's going that way. Yeah, so it wasn't. So Cassius says that they also erased one by Andrew Saul on vitamin C. And yeah, they're doing that right now. So they're censoring pretty much anything that comes out natural influence over coronavirus. We're seeing kind of across the board censorship of any of the natural influencers, any of the natural YouTubers, or any of the other people that are out there, doctors alike, that are trying to give sound information. Let's see here. I like it. Dog's nose knows. We got your back, Dr. O, just like you got ours. Good. I really would appreciate any of you reaching out to the New York Post and just giving them a piece of your mind. And asking, actually, what I'd really like to know is who was that senior editor that was hell bent on writing such a slanted piece before even interviewing me, because that. Again, that's what I heard from the interviewee, was that they were going to write that piece with or without my permission, and Business Insider actually did. They never used any of my comments. I sent them written comment, and they still have not responded to my written comment. Okay, let's see here. So Amanda says, as I have RA and take immunosuppressant drugs, what can I do to help myself? So Amanda, one of the best things that you can do, if you don't already have a copy of No Grain, No Pain, good news is that can't be censored. At least there aren't book burnings yet. That's published by Simon & Schuster, and you can pick that up in any major bookstore in the country. You can also pick that up at Amazon. But pick it up and start following phase 1 and phase 2 diets in chapters 7 and 8. And, with rheumatoid arthritis, it's an autoimmune condition. And those of you who are new to the show and you maybe haven't heard me say this, there are 4 trigger factors for autoimmune disease, and you have to address all 4. And one of them is food. And that's what No Grain, No Pain was written for. It was to help you understand what are the food trigger factors for autoimmunity. But in addition, other trigger factors are vitamin and mineral deficiencies, chemical exposures, and microbial imbalances. And so chapter 10 talks all about that, and it'll give you better insight as to the conversation that you need to go have with your doctor about how you can overcome that RA, because you're being immunosuppressed. And as a matter of fact, all of those out there that have autoimmune disease that are being immunosuppressed right now, one of the things you have to be super cautious about is vaccination in general, because when you're immunosuppressed, that can put you at risk for having a greater potential side effect from taking any form of vaccine. So you've got to be real careful if you're engaged in taking medications that suppress your immune system. Okay, looks like we're getting a lot of censorship tonight. Maybe some of the videos coming in and out. Let's see here. Does the silver ring test work to test for iron deficiency? No, the best way to check for iron deficiency is to run a full battery of tests, running your blood levels of iron, your iron binding capacity, looking at ferritin, also looking at some other nutrients that play a role in iron metabolism, like copper, so ceruloplasmin, and looking at copper levels, and then looking at something called the complete blood count, where there's markers called hemoglobin and mean corpuscular hemoglobin and mean corpuscular volume. These are important markers that can help identify iron deficiency and anemia. So those are the things that you really should be looking at asking your doctor to order on you if you want to really know about iron deficiency. So let's see here. How much vitamin A and vitamin D is best for over 60? Nancy, again, at the end of tonight's show, once we have it finished up, I'll put that link to the video that's been censored, because I give all that information in that video. And in terms of, how long to take it and how much should you look at taking, etc., even over 60. Let's see. Chica says, I've had trigeminal neuralgia, MVD surgery. What can I do to prevent it from coming back? Well, a lot of cases of trigeminal neuralgia, there's some research and evidence that shows that trigeminal neuralgia can be viral. So there could be a viral component. So if you're looking at just being, just purely preventative and doing some things that help your body help your body's immune system work better against viruses, right? Or supporting your immune system adequately, you would want to apply like vitamin C. You would want to look at things like lysine as being effective. There's a product we have called Virid, which is designed to help support the immune system, and you could use that as a kind of as a prevention support supplement if you're trying to just kind of mitigate the potential for risk of recurrence. Beyond that, it's diet. So I mentioned that viral infections can be a trigger for trigeminal neuralgia. So can diet, and gluten. There's actually a lot of evidence showing that gluten can trigger trigeminal neuralgia. So if you have not gone gluten-free, I'd encourage you as well to read No Grain, No Pain and really get your diet on track. Because a lot of people think they're gluten-free, but they're not really gluten-free. They're following what I call a traditional gluten-free diet, and it's not enough. It's not enough to really help get you over the hump and to really help you fully heal and repair. Let's see. RH. I don't know what you mean by a little insulated resistant, unless it was a typo and you meant to say insulin resistant. I have these energy bars that are gluten-free, 20 grams of protein, 0 grams of sugar, 11 grams of sugar, alcohol. Should I be concerned? From an if you mean insulin resistance, if it's got 11 grams of sugar, alcohol, depends on what the sugar alcohol comes from. I mean, sugar alcohols generally, if you're eating them every day, it's not something I really recommend consuming large quantities of on a daily basis. If you're having them every once in a while, probably not as big of an issue. As far as the protein content, I mean, understand that protein can be insulinogenic as well. So depending on the source of the protein and how processed it is. So as a general rule of thumb, non-processed protein is not really going to drive up insulin too much, but processed can. There's evidence that shows that processed protein can. So that bar might be a problem. The best thing that you can do is not eat processed food. I know many of you are gravitating toward those types of conveniences just because you're trying to make life easier, but eat real food is one of the hallmark tenets of being healthy. Let's see, is it safe to eat liver every day? That's one question coming in. It depends. Not all livers created equally. If you're talking about beef liver, yeah, I mean, generally speaking, you could eat it on a daily basis. What happens to a lot of people is they start to have an aversion to the taste of it if it's too much. But could you potentially overdose on certain nutrients depending on the quantity of liver you ate? If you're talking about 2 to 4 ounces of liver, you're probably not going to have a massive overdose. Although liver is a concentrated source of vitamin A and vitamin D. Now, if you're eating if you're a wild game hunter and you hunt elk or moose, those are different types of liver. It's not the same as beef. They're a lot higher in vitamin A. So if you're eating that every day, there is a potential you could run the risk long term of a vitamin A toxicity. But most people aren't eating, wild moose liver or wild elk liver on a daily basis. The hunting season ends and you kind of eat it when it's available and then don't when it's not. Okay, let's see here. Nancy, if you've tried 3 times to order my book from Amazon, call or contact glutenology@gmail.com. Get a hold of us. We'll get you taken care of. Glutenology. Did I make sure I get that spelled right? Glutenology@gmail.com. And just address that to Laura. Laura's in charge of customer service at Gluten Free Society, and she'll make sure that you can get a copy of No Grain, No Pain. We'll take care of that. Ann says, what's a near perfect day of eating for you? A near perfect day? Well, first of all, there is no perfect, right? We strive to be perfect in this world. Life is always on a spectrum. It's on a scale, right? If we look at kind of our behaviors and choices, on one end of the spectrum is perfection. On the other end of the spectrum is death. And we're not dead and we're not perfect. We're always somewhere in between as long as we're alive, right? Well, a lot of people are in this zone, what I call functional illness, meaning they can go to work, they can get up, tie their shoes, make their breakfast, cook their meals, etc., but they don't feel well or they're ill. Where we want to be in this spectrum is we want to be up here, closer to perfection. That zone or that range is called wellness. And wellness is not perfection. And I want to be clear about that because there's no perfect. There isn't a perfect. And I want you to, not that you can't strive for perfect or strive to be the best that you can be, but some people get so overwhelmed with trying to be perfect that it creates such a degree of stress that the stress actually creates health issues for them. So, sorry, I'm just clarifying. So a near perfect day of eating for me, or a good day, is that everything I eat is real food. There are no convenience foods. There are no processed foods. So like for me, I usually don't eat any breakfast at all. It's part of my intermittent fasting strategy. I follow a 16-8 strategy, 16-8 hours of not eating, followed by an 8-hour window where I can eat eat all my meals within that 8-hour time frame. So to me, I feel really good here. My blood sugar stays real stable. I stay real fit doing that. So my first meal of the day, a lot of days I have what I call personal. This is just me personally, the 1 salad a day rule, where I have generally either from my garden or organically bought from a local market, chard and spinach, a little bit of arugula or bok choy, some green leafies. And what I do is I take that, and I like sweet potatoes, so I'll bake up a sweet potato and slice it into medallions and put, call me crazy, but I usually have about 150 grams, so I measure, of sweet potato on my salad. I don't use salad dressing at all, but I'll usually have some blueberries or blackberries or seasonal berries, or if seasonal berries aren't available, and it's like, like it is like right now, well, not right now, but coming up in the fall, like November, when citrus is coming in, I'll use like orange, and I'll put orange wedges on my salad. So again, no salad dressing because it's processed, and then generally some type of meat. And so for me, that might be, I like to grill, so grilled chicken breast, grilled turkey, even ground beef, even ribeye. I like a steak. So sometimes on Sundays with my son, we'll make a steak together, we'll grill together, and then we'll have extra to put on the salad on Monday. So that's all real food, right? And so then again, I also put a little bit of pumpkin seed over that as well, about 10 grams, sometimes as much as 15 grams of pumpkin seed on my salad. So that gives me a nice, well-rounded, well-balanced first meal of my day. Then generally I'll use, on a day where I'll work out heavy, I'll use ultra pure protein, and I'll put either some berries or a half a banana into that. And I'll blend that up with ice. I don't use almond milk or any of these processed milks. I just take the protein powder, which is a pure grass-fed beef protein powder, and I use that again, mix in a little bit of water, ice, and maybe like a half a cup of fruit to make it a little bit sweeter. And then at dinner time, it's just generally whatever we cook. So that's generally, again, it's something maybe from the garden. Like last night I had, for example, we had some ground beef mixed in some nice garden tomatoes with a cabbage from the garden as well. We grew a lot of, we had a really good crop for winter cabbages this year. So we got a lot of really nice heads of cabbage, and we saute that up with some onions. Then we mix in the meat itself and a little bit of herb and spice. And so for me, that's really a great day of eating. Everything was real. There was no, major processed food. There was no eating out. There was no restaurant food. I controlled all the ingredients. I knew where all the ingredients were sourced from or came from. And so I could feel confident that what I was eating wasn't poisoning me. So hopefully that answer helps you in understanding what that might look like. Okay, let's see. Are there any other channels to use instead of this media site? We're working on it. We're working on actually creating a streaming to Gluten-Free Society directly, where when you tune into our show, you actually come to Gluten-Free Society and you watch live from the website, because censorship's just not an option for me. This information and this mission is too important to have a bunch of jerks make a decision about what is and what isn't healthy based on what they want you to do versus versus empowering you. So let me give you the URL. So I was just given this by my team, and so they gave me a URL. If you want to, after the show, if you want to go to Gluten-Free Society, I'm going to abbreviate Gluten-Free Society as FS, and it's .org /viral outbreaks. That is, and we'll put that up underneath in the comment section tonight in the show notes once the show is done, so that you guys can click the link and make sure that you can get access to that was an hour-long video all about how nutritionally to support yourself getting through viral outbreaks, and I want you guys and gals to have that information if you weren't able to get a hold of it yet. Okay, let's see here. Sebastian says, why don't you start a private school? I would definitely enroll in a heartbeat. This is the private school. Welcome to Dr. Osborne University. It's called Pick Dr. Osborne's Brain every Monday night. You are already here, brother. So just keep tuning in. Let's see here. Too many people don't research and verify medical community claims, mistake that could be deadly or unhealthy. I agree, Juan, wholeheartedly. And again, that's what we've been a victim of tonight. So, so the follow-up, somebody's asking, what about a near perfect day of eating for a female? Same. There's no difference. The big difference between, I'm 170 pounds, so, a female might eat less in terms of overall calories, but those same foods could be slid in just in lower quantities to make sure that you're not over-consuming. See, a lot of people, when they go like gluten-free, they think, okay, because they initially lose weight. Most people that go gluten-free lose inflammatory weight and they lose water weight initially. And so then weight loss tapers off. And if you're still trying to lose weight, now some of you are trying to gain weight, but some of you may be trying to lose weight. And so what happens is the weight kind of stabilizes. And then if you aren't careful, and you kind of hear about this keto and some of these other types of diets, you increase the calories, you bump up the fat, and it can get a little bit too high. Remember that although weight loss programs, your goal shouldn't be weight loss, but if you're trying to lose weight and you have never counted your calories and you're not losing weight, although calories are not the most important factor for weight loss, they still are important. So if your diet is non-inflammatory and you're not eating foods that you're allergic to, but you're just finding yourself plateaued at that point, you can count your calories initially and say, okay, where am I at? And then from there, you might consider a downward bump. Remember that 3,500 calories equals 1 pound of fat. So if you're cutting calories to try to lose a pound of fat, on average, you've got to reduce your caloric intake by 500 calories a day, or increase your exercise and increase your calories less than 500 calories a day, but increase your exercise to match the difference. So again, that's just a pure caloric strategy as it relates to weight loss. Let's see. Juan's got a question. If you can't afford lymphocyte proliferation testing, because I talk about this all the time, lymphocyte proliferation testing, this is the gold standard for nutritional evaluation. But if you're going to LabCorp or you're going to your Quest or your doctor, what could you ask for? You can ask for RBC levels. That's the simplest answer. And this isn't accurate 100% across the board, but like RBC for magnesium is a decent measure for magnesium. RBC for zinc is a decent measure for zinc. There are really no RBC levels for things like your B vitamins. There's not really a technology where you're measuring your red blood cell. RBC is red blood cells, so measuring your red blood cell levels for different vitamins. So most of what you're going to get there is going to be serum. And it's not great, but it's better than zero. It's better than absolutely nothing. And so you might get a result that shows that you are low in a particular vitamin. And if your serum levels are low, you're definitely low. The problem with serum levels is if they're not low, it doesn't mean you're not low. It just means that you might have a false negative on your test if it's a serum-based test. But it's better to have some data than zero data. That way, at least you're working off of some objective premise as opposed to just guesswork. Let's see here. So CCF wants to know, I have constant flatulence even waking up in the morning. I don't have it as much when I drink apple cider vinegar before a meal. How can I fix this? Well, you might have a stomach acid issue. If you're taking apple cider vinegar and it helps with your flatulence, it's improving your digestion and reducing your potential gas formation. So you may have a stomach acid problem. And so, getting with your doctor to investigate what that is. And when I say a stomach acid problem, I don't mean too much stomach acid. I mean not enough stomach acid. And some people, I've seen a lot of different scenarios in my practice where some people had low stomach acid as a result of eating foods that were damaging the lining of their stomach, thus reducing their capacity to generate stomach acid. And a lot of times when you identify those foods, then digestion improves and a lot of the symptoms go the wayside with it. Let's see. Susan wants to know, can you please tell me more about low sex hormone binding globulin in young children? What can I do? She's 5 with a low reading of sex hormone binding globulin. It's not an issue. SHBG is not an issue if it's low. It's generally an issue, Susan, if it's high. Sex hormone binding globulin does what it says it does. It binds to sex hormones. And so when your kids are growing, when they're growing and they're releasing their hormones, low levels don't really indicate any major problem. So I wouldn't be so concerned with that. I mean, if your child has an endocrinologist, that you might be able to follow up with that endocrinologist and ask for some follow-up testing on hormones, pituitary hormones, and other things, and that might not be a bad idea as a general rule of thumb. Let's see here. Oh, so Dwayne says, I had a pituitary tumor removed and now I take hydrocortisone. It depends. Was your pituitary tumor so big that it created a problem in your body's ability to produce adrenocorticotropic hormone, or ACTH? ACTH is the hormone from your brain, right, from your pituitary, that travels to your adrenal gland, that tells you to produce your own cortisol. So if you had a tumor removed and that damaged your body's ability to generate that, so that your adrenal glands are not really doing their job by producing that, that would be a good question for the doctor. I can't answer that question without that additional information. So I would ask your doctor, maybe your surgeon or your endocrinologist or internal medicine doctor who's making that drug recommendation, to see why that recommendation is still there. If it's because the surgery damaged your body's ability, that might be the best option for you, even though long-term cortisol has side effects, including hydrocortisone, but it may be the best option for you if a surgery has taken away your ability to produce it on your own. I love that. Linda says, I purchased 2 No Grain, No Pain books, not finished with it yet, but very informative, and it may save mine and children's life. So read the whole thing. Like, don't wait to get to the end of it. We've got so many testimonials on people who were in the hospital, on people who were, on their deathbeds, pulling out, recovering as a result of the information in No Grain, No Pain. So don't wait to read it. Can gluten-free benefit pulmonary sarcoidosis? I've seen it benefit sarcoidosis, yes. And so I'm glad you brought that up, because sarcoidosis is the one situation, well, not the one, but it's a situation where what I was talking about last week with vitamin D, if you have sarcoidosis, or if you have like a high level of serum calcium that's uncontrolled, higher doses of vitamin D is not a good move for you. That's why one of the things I said in that show is get with your doctor if you have an underlying health condition, to make sure that doing vitamin D is not a bad idea. Okay. How do I gain weight while taking Ritalin? I think the better question, Dennis, is why are you taking Ritalin? What do you need it for? If you're taking it for energy and focus, then your body's missing something else. You're lacking B vitamins. You're lacking eating the right food. You're lacking something else. And so you're using Ritalin as a drug to overcome what your body is lacking. And so, the bigger question that I would ask is, why are you taking Ritalin? Living Organically says, Big Pharma is feeling the pain from all the wonderful influencers that promote natural healing and expose the truth about our healthcare system that has nothing to do with health, to be honest. Love it. It's true. They are feeling the pain, because there's a saying, right, is that truth resonates, right? When you hear truth, when you've only been lied to, when you finally hear truth, like, there's a liberation. The proverbial shackles that are binding your brain and binding your body to do the right things are broken, and that truth resonates, and it resonates on such a level that it disrupts industries. People ask me, one of the things people ask me quite often is, what can we do to fix the medical system? And there's nothing you can do to fix the current medical system. The only thing you can do is create such a massive swell of people who are alive and living because of the truth, that the medical system no longer has any customers. So you create a system of education and knowledge and truth that puts the other system and makes it obsolete. So we're not trying to change something that's already broken. We're just trying to spread the light and the knowledge to people so that they have choices. Okay. Let's see here. Diandra says, I've been taking Detox C, 4 pills, 4 grams a day, and I feel super awesome. However, I give my husband 1 pill and it keeps him up at night. Why is that? Well, different people have different responses. Now, I would say, Deandra, if you're giving him 1 gram and he's staying up at night, I would ask what time of the day he's taking that 1 gram. Because vitamin C is important, and what it does is it helps support the body's ability to make adrenaline and noradrenaline, which are hormones that keep us awake and alert. This is why a lot of people feel energy when they're vitamin C deficient and they start correcting it, is they're now capable of producing adrenaline and noradrenaline and dopamine, whereas before they weren't making it as well. And so you might just attempt, if giving your husband that 1 gram dose in the morning early, and see if that impacts his sleep or not. But, some people have weird side effects to supplements, and there is no answer. And so without running additional types of testing to try to determine why that's happening, it's really hard for me to answer that question just in generality. I like that. Sybil says, do you have an email address for us, for these journalists and magazines, so we can get to them directly, and also for Facebook and YouTube? Not for YouTube. There's, with YouTube, I just get a no reply email. There's nobody I can actually literally talk to. Same thing with Facebook. There's so many layers of red tape, you can't get to an actual person. But I will publish the emails of both of the articles, the writers of both of those articles, the one in Business Insider and the one in New York Post. I will publish those. I'll make that available again. We'll have to get that put together for you, but I will put that underneath this video in the show notes. Okay, Hina says, what about a list of things to keep in stock in case of emergency or disaster that requires us to stay indoors? That was my intention tonight, was to do that whole show about like how to prep for this, how to prep for not so much the emergency, because I don't necessarily think coronavirus itself is a national emergency as much as maybe some people do. I think it will run its course, and I think humans will prevail. But I think the bigger problem is the panic and the fear that's going to set in, where people are running to the grocery store, they're buying off all the water off the shelves, they're buying up all the food. And so what happens when, there's an old saying, it's a Chinese proverb, and that is failing to plan is planning to fail. And so what you want to make sure that you're doing, if you're really trying to prepare for an emergency, and if we can find this on Gluten-Free Society, I wrote an article a number of years ago on preparing for an emergency. So especially those of you who have a gluten sensitivity and you're trying to prepare for an emergency in case of a gluten issue. But I wrote a full article on that. One of the things that prompted me to do that is I was stuck in San Diego one weekend a number of years ago, and the power in the entire city went out, including all the cell service. So we didn't know what was happening. We were completely in the dark for almost 24 hours. And so the food was gone within about 8 hours. The stores were cleaned out. The restaurants were cleaned out. It was a mess. So if you're trying to really prepare yourself, for the potential of an emergency, whether it's coronavirus or any emergency for that matter, one of the smartest things that you can make sure that you have stocked up on and have enough of is water. And 2 types of water. One is drinkable water, and the other is potable water. So, because one of the things that happens in an emergency sometimes is electricity goes out. And if electricity's out, then if you have especially if you have like a septic tank and you live out in the country, then your septic tank won't work. And so you'll have to add water to your toilets for them to be able to flush. One of the things that happens, we just had this happen in Houston. One of the main water mains broke in Houston. So several of my team members were without water for a few days because one of the mains broke. And so if you have water available, you can still use your bathroom. If you have water to pour into the toilet to have a flush, but water, both drinkable and potable water. Additionally, you want to have food storage. And so I recommend keeping some food storage on hand. So what I call emergency rations. Now, emergency rations are not the same thing. It's not like you can't, with an emergency scenario, sometimes your diet has to compromise a little bit. So this is where you might have like canned goods, right? So canned, in our house, we do some canning in mason jars, but canned goods that will have a shelf life of anywhere to 5 to 10 years, so that if you do have the need to grab something, that you have it there, and you have it there for your whole family to eat. So having several, like depending on if you got a big pantry or a little pantry, but if you don't have a big pantry, put a place out in your garage where you stack up, several days worth, at least several days worth, in my opinion, more like, several weeks worth of canned goods that you could get by on. It might not be the healthiest, most nutritious, most well-balanced nutritional meals that you ever ate, but it's something, if you go hungry, you won't starve. So like those are like two of the biggest things. It's just having enough food and having enough water, because what happens and what people are worried about with Corona right now is the potential for quarantine, because you look at China and there's been quarantine there. If you look at Italy, there's been some quarantine there. And so you look at some of these places where they actually are implementing quarantine. What happens if you end up with it and they send you home, right? And you don't have these things at home, but now you're being quarantined. What are you going to do? Yeah, you could call Amazon to come out and deliver, I guess, right now. But what happens if your whole town gets quarantined? Then what's going to happen? Or what happens if they create curfews where you can't go out, but at certain times, and when you do go out, there's minimum level of canned goods. There's a minimal level of water available, so you don't have really enough to make it happen. So that's the issue. So have these things. The other thing is, a lot of people don't think about this one, but you run out of that and you're going to have a mess on your hands. So toilet paper is something that people generally just don't think about in these types of emergency times, and you don't want to run out of toilet paper. So again, I'm going to do a more in detailed show about this next week. But for those of you listening, if you would like to kind of get a head start, just think about some of these things here as being on your emergency list, so that, again, that you don't get caught off guard. I'm not trying to be an alarmist and tell you all that the sky is falling, but again, it's better to be prepared than to be caught unprepared and not have a choice. Choices are always better than not having them. Let's see here. How are viruses identified? Usually they're identified through different kinds of blood tests. So they can do what's called PCR, polymerase chain reaction, where they identify the DNA presence of the virus in the blood. That's one of the more common tests where doctors are running to identify the virus. Let's see here. What supplements would I recommend for acute pancreatitis? If you got acute pancreatitis, I recommend a hospital. That can be life-threatening. So really, you've got to get something like that under control really, really quickly. If you're talking about acute pancreatitis. Now, if you have chronic pancreatic inflammation, as measured by, generally what doctors will measure is they'll measure a couple of different serum enzymes, amylase and lipase. And these will be mildly elevated. Generally the numbers shouldn't really go above 80, but you might have like 150 and 150 or 200, something like that. That's low grade pancreatic inflammation. That's something, if you wanted to supplement and support your pancreas, remember what your pancreas's job is. Your pancreas's job is to help you produce digestive enzymes so you can break your food down better. So one of the things that I have seen be very helpful for people in their support of pancreatic inflammation is a digestive enzyme formula. And so in this example, Ultra Digest is one of my formulations that I would recommend as kind of, again, this is not to treat your pancreatitis. That's not what it's for, but it's to support your pancreas. When your pancreas is inflamed and it can't produce adequate levels of enzymes to help you digest your food, then the catch-22 of that over time is you become malnourished. And when you become malnourished, you can't heal. You can't repair as effectively. So this is just a support mechanism as you're dealing with this. Ultimately, though, you want to find out why your pancreas is inflamed. So if your pancreas is inflamed, there's a reason why. And for some people, it's an infection. And so this is what I mean by it. If you've got an acute pancreatitis episode, it could be because you have a major infection and you need to get that looked at by an acute care specialist. This is one area in medicine where, look, we have a lot of chronic diseases. People with chronic autoimmune diseases, arthritis, rheumatoid diseases, Hashimoto's, where medicine, in my opinion, is not the best move, because medicine only suppresses the immune system further to suppress the symptoms. But when it comes to an acute emergency situation like acute pancreatitis, that's one of the times you do want a good acute care physician on your team helping you figure out why that acute pancreatitis is there. So, you know the old saying, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. A lot of people in the natural healthcare community are kind of like, oh, you never need medicine for any reason. And that's just not true. There's definitely a time and a place for medicine. It's just, again, with chronic autoimmune problems, there's no great solutions. Most of the solutions, most of the drugs are aimed at suppressing your immune system for years at the risk of developing cancer. And that's to me, that's not a fair trade. When we know there are root causes, there are 4 categorical root causes of autoimmunity. And if you ask your doctor to investigate those, if your doctor's versed in those, hopefully he or she is, then you can get more to the bottom of why. But with acute pancreatitis, don't play around. It can kill you. Okay. Let's see. I have stage 4 osteoporosis and have been placed on Fosamax after calcium and vitamin D and K would not work after 2 years. Is there anything I can do to reverse it naturally or no hope? So you need to go watch my video on bone scan myths. We did a whole show on that, Harad, and that video might really help you quite a bit in understanding a little bit better about what to do, because that's a pretty detailed answer. Let's see here. Man, the questions are just coming and we're running out of time. Let's see. Let me try to pick something that's pertinent to the show. Can you review? If you want to, Linda, if you want to see the vitamin C flush, we have that information up on Gluten Free Society. Just go to Gluten Free Society, type in vitamin C flush. You can also watch that video that I did a few weeks ago on the vitamin C flush and immune system support. Let's see here. Love it. Maggie says she's in Washington, went out and prepared today. Yeah, that's right. If you're in one of those areas where the virus is really starting to spread, you really need to make sure you're taking action steps quickly to be as prepared as possible. Okay. Yeah, I think we're about at the hour, folks. So I've got to wrap it up. We've got a lot of work to do post this whole media bias thing. My team is working diligently on making sure that you have access to the information that was censored. And as always, thanks for tuning in. It's my pleasure spending Monday evenings with you. We'll be back again next Monday. Again, if you are not on my email list, if you have not signed up through Gluten Free Society and I do not have your email, but you enjoy my show, there's a very real possibility we might not be on YouTube next week. I don't know. I don't control what YouTube does, but the reality is they've censored us once. Are they keeping a microscope over us now to make sure that anything they don't like that I'm telling you or having you do or giving you advice about, are they going to influence that in the future? I just don't know. So the best way to ensure that you're not going to get censored from this information is to make sure you're on my email list, because the only person that has access to my email list is my team. And we don't share your email. We don't spam your email. We don't give your email to other people that sell stuff. Like we honor and respect that bond. So if you're kind of nervous about email, just know that about us is that we only would use it to send you information that might be life-changing and life-saving. So thanks so much for tuning in. Again, if you could, give me a hashtag save 100 million lives in the commentary. That's our message here, save 100 million lives, but spell it out. It's all spelled out, and I'd appreciate that. So we'll see you next week for another show. Wishing you excellent health. Take care. Hey, if you've got a functional medicine or health question that you'd like me to answer for you, make sure you send me an email, glutenology@gmail.com, and we'll do our best to create a video answer just for you. Have a great day.